Hi, Angel. I want to share an experience that my son had recently. He came into my office and he said, Mom, I need to talk to you about something that happened. And he sounded like this is going to be a big deal. And I got a little scared. I was like, what's he going to tell me? Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm listening. No matter what he says, I'm going to show up with love. I'm going to just listen. And he said, Mom, I was in the basement, and we live in a 100-year-old house, and the basement is kind of creepy. It feels that way. That's the perception when you're down there in the dark in this 100-year-old house. And he said, Mom, I was in the basement, and I wasn't thinking about anything particular. I was just like humming a song, and then all of a sudden I felt this really dark presence next to me, and I felt really afraid for a moment. And my son, he's a computer engineer, and he's very logical, and this is not the way he usually talks, so I was surprised to hear him say that. But he said, I just intuitively knew that whatever this presence was, it was lost and scared. And that's why it was trying to scare me. And I turned to this presence and I said, I understand that you're trying to scare me, but I want you to know that I still love you. And then he said he felt this pause. And then everything got lighter and he felt peaceful and he felt safe. And that really blew my mind, because whether he was imagining that or not, what a great way to respond to fear. What an indomitable way to respond to fear. I invite myself and you to respond to fear that way. To experiment with that in any form, whether it's a person, place, or circumstance. In A Course in Miracles, it talks about how we cannot become unworthy, but the ego will attempt to convince us that we can become unworthy and that we have become unworthy. Nobody looks at a little baby and goes, that's a bad little baby. Well, maybe some people do, but hopefully not you and I. We look at an innocent little baby and we think, look at that precious, sweet little angel. And just because that sweet, precious little angel is going to grow up and be confronted by a lot of, in this 3D, man-made paradox, man-made reality, is going to be confronted with a lot of misperceptions, is going to be told things that are not true, is going to be exposed to things that seem scary. And that child is going to have no way to always perfectly make the right decision, because it doesn't have a data set big enough to always make the right decision. None of us have a data set big enough to always make the right decision. Now, if we tap into the truth, if we allow the Holy Spirit to enlighten our minds, we will always make the right decision. And even then, it's probably not realistic to think that from the age of a young child up through adulthood, that we're always 100% going to be connected to that wise mind. So if you can look at that little child and you know that it will experience error in thinking and it will make mistakes, then we have a choice. We either get to see that as part of the perfection, or we've pre-condemned that child. Like, oh yeah, you're sweet and cute now, but you're soon going to become horrible. Or we can look at that beautiful child and say, you are perfect, whole, and complete. Even though you still have a lot to learn. And you're going to learn through trial and error. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to experience cause and effect. And that is perfect. going to read from chapter 5 of the text, Healing and Wholeness, section 4, paragraph 4. I heard one voice because I understood that I could not atone for myself alone. Listening to one voice implies the decision to share it in order to hear it yourself. The mind that was in me is still irresistibly drawn to every mind created by God because God's wholeness is the wholeness of his Son. You cannot be hurt and do not want to show your brother anything except your wholeness. Show him that he cannot hurt you and hold nothing against him, or you hold it against yourself. This is the meaning of turning the other cheek. I'm going to wrap this up here because I love that teaching. Show him that he cannot hurt you and hold nothing against him, or you hold it against yourself. If my son had chosen fear in that moment, he would have lost that opportunity in that moment to spread light, to spread truth. I was thinking really deeply about it the other day, about how sometimes I'm afraid I'll hurt my children. And it made me realize that the greatest gift I could give my mother, if it were possible, and A Course in Miracles says it is, the ego says it's not, but A Course in Miracles says it is, for me to not let my mother have hurt me. To choose to be whole and complete, despite any human frailty or foibles that she may or may not have had. I hope, and I trust, and according to A Course in Miracles, it is so, that I cannot actually hurt my children. On a certain level, and A Course in Miracles acknowledges that there's different levels to reality. There's the small reality with the lowercase r, and then there's the eternal truth with the uppercase r. In this temporal experience, I could damage their psyches by being cruel. But I cannot destroy their true nature, which is love. And there is nothing that I can break that God cannot make whole. And that is why the most kind and loving thing we can do for our brothers and sisters, for our parents and our children, is to set that example and be whole. And thereby reminding them of who they truly are. And again, if there's anything that I ever say or that we read together in A Course in Miracles that doesn't make sense to you, I invite you to sit with it and ask the Holy Spirit to be with you and to illuminate these teachings. And maybe I explained it in an unhelpful way, and for that I deeply apologize. And yet, I know that as you open your heart up and have a willingness to understand, that the Holy Spirit can explain it to you perfectly, so much better than I ever could. But what an honor for me just to be able to give you these daily reminders. Thank you. Thank you for letting me remind us both of these beautiful principles. Thank you for being patient with me when I don't say it in the perfect right way that you need. You deserve the best teachers always in the entire universe. And fortunately, you always have that. Because the Holy Spirit resides in you. And you can call that forth. And you can be still and know. But it does require stillness and willingness. And that's about it. Thank you so much for being here. I love you. We'll talk soon.